may introduce the first session of this morning and of this day. I'm very pleased to introduce this on behalf of Professor Lafleur. And we will hear this during this first session, 6 papers, if my program is right. Since the schedule is very tight, I will ask everybody to stick to the 15 minutes paper, especially considering the delay with the transfer or the transition with PowerPoint. So the first speaker of this session is Marisa Xiao. She is from Tel Aviv University, and she has worked on fibulae in southern Levant during the Iron Age. She's doing her PhD on this subject. So Marisa, if you want to share your screen, we'll be pleased to hear you.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Very good.
My contribution to this conference, which I'm very excited to be a part of, by the way, is to provide an insight into the fibulae of the ancient Near East in regards to their function, the exact chronology and context, and their transmission first from the Aegean world and then to Assyria via the southern Levant. The mechanism of adoption by the elite of both the southern Levant and Assyria was facilitated by local and imperial trade routes throughout the region. The fibula was adopted and then changed to suit the needs and performances of the local elite. These inclinations are reflected at certain sites better than others in the southern Levant, the relationships between which I have explored. The precursor to the fibula, the toggle pin, first appears as early as the Chalcolithic period and was introduced to the southern Levant by the end of the early Bronze Age from Anatolia. This type of pin was worn throughout the Bronze Age before disappearing entirely by the Iron Age to be replaced with the fibula. Part of this change from the toggle pin to the fibula was probably a result of a change in fashion brought on by an advancement in weaving technology in the wider Mediterranean basin. The change to a looser, more draped style of clothing thus constituted the need for more advanced fasteners such as the fibula. Part of the rise in the change in fashion is attributed to the exchange of goods and ideas that spread along the vast network of trade routes that facilitated such contacts throughout the Mediterranean. There are several examples across the Mediterranean that show that fibulae were very commonly worn, which I'm sure you all know already. The earliest examples of fibula represented on sculpture in the Near East are from Khorsabad and Ivris, depicting men bringing tribute to various rulers. Concurrent with these depictions are examples from Marash and Zinkirli, also depicting both men and women wearing the fibula to fasten a garment during ordinary life. These artistic depictions continue into the Persian period and beyond. The earliest fibulae appeared in Italy, as you well know, and were imported to the Aegean during the late Helladic 3B and to Cyprus, as indicated by a fibula from late Cypriot Tusi and Komi. In the 12th century, one-piece fibulae appear at Hala Sultan Teke on Cyprus, with a close parallel from northern Italy. By the turn of the millennium, fibulae appear at various sites in Greece, such as at Salamis and Parati, and on Cyprus. At this early time, fibulae of this style also begin to appear at Levantine sites, such as the Phase F citadel at Hama, and 3 Group A copper alloy fibulae found at Tel Tainat in contemporaneous contexts. For the groupings, I've used Friedhelm Pede's 2000 dissertation-based monograph. Current information suggests that fibulae in Aegean forms appeared in the southern Levant during the early Iron 2A at the harbor of Tel Abu Hawam. A single specimen from stratum 4 stands as the earliest found in its stratified context in the southern Levant, and thus joins other indications of active participation of the inhabitants of Tel Abu Hawam in the Eastern Mediterranean trade networks that must have brought the fibula to the site. Another fibula was found at stratum 3 in Tel Abu Hawam, dated to the late Iron 2A, and additional contexts dating to this period feature fibulae for the first time. Single items were found in Tel Hatzor, stratum 8B, Tel Michal, stratum 13, and Lahish level 4, while 3 items were found at Tel Bet Shemesh Tomb 1. These include Aegean-style items from Tel Abu Hawan and Tel Lahish, alongside items belonging to groups B and C, thus indicating the development of local variants. By the Iron 2B, fibulae in the southern Levant begin to change forms, becoming distinctly local in style and not Cypriot or Aegean in design. Fibulae become much more common in Judah, at sites housing administrative personnel such as at Tel Lahish Level 3 and Tel Beersheba in Strata 2 and 3. It is also during this time that the one-piece fibula ceases to exist or be produced in the southern Levant at all, instead favoring the two-pieced version. The one-piece fibula exists only in the Western Mediterranean from this point forward in the geometric period. It is also during the Iron 2B that fibulae spread further into the Caucasus and Anatolia regions and then into Assyria. The latter was possibly a result of the incorporation of Aramaean culture and dress into Assyrian practices known as the gradual Aramization of Assyria. Examples of this phenomenon are two discovered in sarcophagi at Nimrud. In the Iron 2C, with the spread of Assyrian influence, the now changed fibula spreads throughout the empire and back thus into the southern Levant. With regard to local fibulae development, the number and groups of fibulae at Megiddo increases into the double digits, as well as smaller increases in the Transjordan, mainly at Amman. In addition, Assyrian-style fibulae are added to the distribution for the very first time. The spread of Assyrian-style fibulae is concurrent with the growing dominance of Assyria over the region, as well as the spread of Assyrian production techniques in the manufacture of the fibula. In this period, it is developed into a distinctive and long-lasting Assyrian form, as fibulae are seen worn by Persians centuries after their inception in an almost identical way to the Assyrians, as seen on the Apadana at Persepolis in the 5th century BCE. Several examples of the remodeled Assyrian-style fibulae have been found at sites within the southern Levant. This is a result of this kind of fibula being both imported from Assyria and manufactured locally within the southern Levant. Fibulae are distributed fairly evenly throughout the southern Levant, with examples as far north as Hatzor and as far south as Horbat Ritma, with a southernmost exception located at Tel El Khalifa. To further contextualize the distribution of fibulae in each period, I've chosen certain sites to be examined against the larger historical archaeological background of the southern Levant in the Iron II. Analyzing the numbers and context of fibulae in these specific cases allows us to determine the exact function of the fibula at the site in which it was found. I focused on Tel Bet Shemesh, Tel Beersheba, and Megiddo. 3 fibulae were found in Tomb 1 in Bet Shemesh, and it was a regional administrative center in the Iron 2A, and these fibulae discovered in Tomb 1 were found in a very rich assemblage, suggesting that fibulae were worn by the administrative class of urban centers. Bet Shemesh is an example of the form and function of the fibula being adopted by the local administrative class, which differs from how they're found in subsequent periods. In the Iron 2B, there are 12 fibulae discovered at Tel Beersheba. 3 are from Stratum 3 and 9 are from Stratum 2, and they're found all over the town, dating to the Iron 2B, found in domestic quarters, storerooms, suggesting that they were very common items. A possible reason for the appearance of so many well-contextualized fibulae in a relatively small site could be the nature of Tel Beersheba as a Judahite administrative center and a commercial hub involved in the desert trade route during the 8th century BCE. Located at a major road junction, the site sits at the confluence of trade routes between the desert fringe, the Mediterranean, and the Judahite heartland, enabling it to be a meeting point for different passengers who could exchange ideas and practices with the locals and other travelers. It's against this background that the appearance in the 8th century of fibulae at the site in both Strata 2 and 3 should be understood, both as the belongings of Judahite officials residing in the trade center and possibly of some of the merchants that passed through the site on various trade routes. The main assemblage of fibulae during the Iron II sea comes from Tel Megiddo. Out of the 56 fibulae found throughout the site, 21 come from clean contexts. 14 come from stratum 3 and are very well contextualized. Most of the fibulae found in Megiddo in both strata 2 and 3 are of common groups to the southern Levant, regardless of whether or not they come from good context, but there are outliers. One is of special note, as it belongs to subgroup D5, again, Pede's classification, that finds parallels in Assyria, but it includes a stamp seal as part of the fibula itself. As seals are shown to have been worn on one's person in Assyria and other regions in the ancient Near East, it's logical that such a stamp seal be discovered at Megiddo, the site of Assyrian governance in the southern Levant. What's unique about this seal, however, is that it is attached to the bend of the fibula itself. In addition, the incorporation of a stamp seal on an Assyrian-style fibula is further evidence of the Aramaic influence on the Assyrian Empire, as Levantine stamp seals began to replace Assyrian cylinder seals in this time period. To sum up, as part of an ideology of elitism in the southern Levant, in both local and imperial contexts, a new fashion was adopted as a mark of status. Part of this new fashion included the new use of fibulae beginning in the early Iron Age, and then intensifying to the point where fibulae were common as a part of the elite costume by the Iron II period. The arrival of new goods to the southern Levant is due to the widespread trade network throughout the Near East, the Levant, and the Aegean regions. In this case, the desire for luxury goods such as fibulae and other jewelry demonstrates that the wider society reflected a taste for materially complex personal ornaments. The desire to acquire something fashionable in the wider world urged the elite of the southern Levant to adopt the fibula as part of their dress code. In addition, the wide extent of trade routes, especially passing through Tel Beersheba, would have enabled the elite to be both cognizant of and have access to such luxury goods in an early period. Later, as the Assyrian domination over the southern Levant progressed, these changes in elite representation spread northward, bringing the fibula to the imperial elite of Megiddo in the late Iron II sea. The spread of fibulae to and from the southern Levant and their integration into the local and imperial spheres created a long-standing tradition that is seen centuries later in Persia and the rest of the world, even having its own iteration in the modern safety pin, which we all use to fasten our clothing today, at least when we have a wardrobe malfunction. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Marissa, for this very fascinating paper, and especially, of course, the last exemplar of the fibula with a stamp, which obviously stick with the question of authority linked to the fibula, which is something that we are not much used to in the Greek world, which I come from, and which is very interesting. I just say that we will stick the question to the end of the session, as stipulated on the program, and we right now pass the microphone to Kerstin Bauer, who is working on Alpheneos in Arcadia and has dug there for a long period, and we'll talk about this fibula of this site in Greece. Thank you. Kerstin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, good morning. And I have pre-recorded my video and sent it to Ergin Waffley, and hopefully he will now play it. Hello everybody. I'm thankful for the opportunity to present my talk at this e-conference. Today I'm going to present a spectacle fibula with bone plate from the sanctuary of a female deity on the Acropolis of Phineus in Arcadia. Phineus is located in northeastern Arcadia in the basin of the same name, which lies between the basins of Stymphalos, Orchomenos, Cletor and Lusor. Ancient Phineus is located at an altitude of about 750 meters above sea level and extended around a hill up to 70 meters high, which lies on the western side of the valley and also functioned as an acropolis. Since 2011, the University of Graz, in cooperation with the EFA Corinthians, has been investigating the city wall located on the northern flank of the hill, as well as a sanctuary located on the eastern extension of the hill. Further excavations in Phineas are being carried out by the University of Trier at the Asklepios, which lies southeast of the Acropolis. The finds discussed here come from a sanctuary on the Acropolis, which is a two-phase structure dating to the High Archaic and Early Classical periods. In the final construction phase, it is a rectangular building facing southeast, in which many finds remained in situ due to an event of destruction in the late Classical period. Based on the amount and type of jewelry, as well as the votive terracottas, the sanctuary can be attributed to a female deity, who, however, cannot be determined in more detail at the moment. The jewelry or costume components are being worked on as my master thesis. In addition to the fibulae, they also include pins, earrings, rings, bracelets, decorative plates, pendants and beads. As in other archaic sanctuaries in the Peloponnese, there are fewer fibulae than needles in Phineas. Of 7 fibulae found, 5 are spectacle fibulae with a bone plate. These can be easily distinguished from ivory specimens by the spongiosa of the bone visible on the back. Cattle shoulder blades were often used to make bone spectacle fibulae. The other 2 fibulae from Phineas are a so-called simple geometric fibula with twisted arc and the Peloponnesian hinged fibula with 3 beads. The spectacle fibulae were divided in 2 groups by J stabbings, according to the shape and the pattern presented on them. The group known as the type alpha consists of 2 large circles connected by a bridge of 2 intervening smaller circles. The type beta consists of 2 large circles, but this time the intervening smaller circles are placed on a bridge that is larger than the circles themselves. 4 of the 5 fibula plates from Phineas can be assigned to the type alpha, 1 to the type beta. They vary in length between 5.3 and 8.5 centimeters and have a width of 2.5 to 3.8 centimeters and an average thickness of 0.4 centimeters. All fibula plates bear the so-called bull's eye motif, in which other smaller circles fill in the large circles. Other motifs common to fibula plates are braided bands and rosettes or inlays of other materials, such as amber. The fibula of type alpha had inlays, of which, however, nothing has survived. The round depression provided for this purpose are located in the center of both the large and the smaller intervening circles and show an incised center as well as a cross. This can also be observed on the comparison pieces. Corroded fragments of the iron connecting rivets between the bone plate and the supporting fibula show how the plate was attached. They are visible on both the back and the front of the bone plates. The metal fibula on which the decorative plates were attached are only preserved in a fragment on the type alpha plate number 2 and the type beta plate. In contrast to the plates of type alpha, which were attached at 2 points, the type beta has 4 holes for attachment to the fibula. These are distributed along the length of the fibula and have a larger diameter than the holes of type alpha. On the pheniatic example of the type beta, part of the bow of the supporting fibula has survived, including 2 rivets on the back. The rivets of the 2 outer fastening holes are missing. The smooth, even fracture surface of the metal plate bow allow the interpretation that the fibula was deliberately separated from the plate, possibly in order to recycle the metal, but only to the extent of not damaging the plate. If the object had no longer had any value at the time of disassembly, there would definitely have been a damage of the bone plate when the fibula was detached. The lack of fibulae in the find material of the temple also speaks for a deliberate separation of the bone plates from the supporting fibula. Spectacle fibula with a plate bow or a bone or ivory plate appear later than their metal counterparts and are made and used roughly between the end of the 8th century and the 6th century BC. Out of 5 spectacle fibulae from Phineus, 4 pieces, the numbers 1 and 3 to 5, can be assigned to undisturbed layers of the sanctuary. Of these plates, number 3 to 5 can definitely be assigned to the first, high archaic phase of the temple. Only the fibula plate number 2 comes from a layer that already contains relocated material from the temple, which possibly arrived there during the construction of the nearby city wall during Hellenistic times. Now, let's move on to the comparison and differences. Spectacle fibula with a bone plate are widespread throughout the area of Greek influence at that time, from the Magna Graecia to Asia Minor. An accumulation within this area was found on the Peloponnese as well as in Asia Minor. However, this could be a result of the state of research and publication, as well as the so far missing spectacle fibula from Peloponnesian tombs. The bone plates are made in one piece and their shape imitates the widespread spectacle fibula made out of metal wire with a figure of 8 loop. Throughout the entire area of distribution of spectacle fibulae with bone or ivory plates, there are regional variations and imitations of Greek types, especially in southern Italy, which exist alongside with the imported pieces. Subsequently, metal fibula plates also developed, which in turn imitate those made out of bone. The best comparisons for the fibula from Phineus, they are marked here in green, are mainly found in the Peloponnese or in its closer surroundings. Comparable pieces for the fibula of type alpha are known from the sanctuary of Artemis Himera in neighboring Lusoi, the sanctuary of Artemis Orthia in Sparta, the Heraion of Argos, the Heraion of Perachora, the sanctuary of Apollo on Aegina, or the sanctuary of Aetos on Ithaca. Close comparisons for the type beta pieces come from Olympia and the Heraia of Perachora and Argos, among others. Now let's move on to the Greek fibula from Asia Minor. Similar spectacle fibula with bull's eye decoration also occur in Asia Minor, as already mentioned. Corresponding examples were found in Ephesus, Lindos and Chios, among other places. In contrast to the comparative examples from the Peloponnese and its surroundings, the Asia Minor bone plates often have a smaller or larger number of small circles surrounding the center than the examples already mentioned. The majority of these fibulae from Chios are described by J. Boardman as imports of unknown provenance. In the Magna Graecia region, spectacle fibulae with bone plates imported from Greece were found in Selinunt, Gela, Musumeli, Himera, Syracuse, Locroi and Metapont, among others. The connection between the Magna Graecia and the motherland is shown, for example, in 2 very similar fibulae decorated with birds from Locra Epiciferioi and Hallai in Locris. Local imitations come, for example, from Sala Consilina and Gravina di Puglia. Differences to Greek pieces include the decoration and all the material. And now to summarize. Spectacle fibula with bone plates are found throughout the Greek sphere of influence from the geometric to the classical period. In contrast to other fully metal fibula types, which are mostly treated under the category of bronze finds or various small finds, a more precise treatment of the plates is often missing. The pieces from Phineas can be assigned to the first, high archaic phase of the temple of a yet unknown female deity. In their form and workmanship, they correspond to the contemporary examples found on and around the Peloponnese. Thank you for your attention.
And thanks a lot to you, Kirsten, for this very interesting presentation, which have the great advantage to have the context and the context that can provide us a good insight to the use of this kind of fibula and put another dot on the map. And it also stretched the role of Arcadia in this early period, because which is often underestimated, I think. So since we are quite not too late, we stick to the schedule and pass the table to Manolis Petrakis for the National Cappadostrian University of Athens, and will present a paper on the sanctuary of Apollo on Despotico.
Good morning. My topic is the fibula from Despotico. The presentation will go as follows. First, a very short introduction to the topography and excavation history of the site. Then, a summary of the sanctuary, its buildings, main finds, and the deities worshipped. And then, we will continue with the main part, the presentation of the fibulae and their typology. Last, we will associate them with their find spots, and we will close by attempting to draw some preliminary conclusions on their function in the sanctuary. The island of Despotico lies in the middle of the Aegean, to the southwest of Paros and Antiparos. The sanctuary, although one of the most important culting centers of the Cyclades, is unattested in ancient texts. It is positioned in the northeast of the island, at a point where it was connected with the neighboring islet Tsimidiri during the antiquity. The first limited excavations were conducted in 1959 by Nikolaos Zafiropoulos. However, the sanctuary was only discovered in 1997 by the rescue excavations of the Ephorate of Antiquities of Cyclades, under the direction of Yanos Kouragios. Since 2001, he directs the systematic archaeological exploration of the site, which is still ongoing, having uncovered 22 buildings. He also leads an international team preparing the sanctuary's publication. I also wish to thank him from this position for entrusting me with the study of the metal finds. The excavation has revealed three complexes, the so-called North Complex or Temenos, the East Complex, and the South Complex. Since most of our fibulae derive from the Temenos, we will focus there. The origins of the cult activity can be traced back to the mid-9th century BC. Two successive geometric buildings have been excavated, building Omicron and building Xi. The second one has exactly the same alignment with the later building Alpha, the primary cult building during the Archaic era. Buildings Delta and Epsilon, included in the sanctuary's special planning of the 6th century, and served various cult activities. In the center of the Temenos there was the altar. On your screen you can now see how it would look like during the Archaic period, when it flourished. Cult continued through classical and Hellenistic times, though not as intensively as in the previous centuries. By late antiquity, the sanctuary had been abandoned. The primary deity was Apollo, as suggested by numerous inscribed sherds. An inscribed marble slab also testifies the cult of Aestheia, while the two-part plan of the sanctuary and female statue fragments suggest that Artemis was probably venerated too. Finds include a large variety and quantity of objects, such as a series of kuri, kore, and statue bases, figurines, jewels, weapons, and else. The finds show that the cult in the sanctuary thrived especially during the late Archaic and early Classical periods. Among them, there are about 30 fibulae, to which we will now focus. The Despotico fibulae fall into 6 categories: the Phrygian and Phrygian imitations, the bow-shaped fibulae, the Attic Boeotian type fibulae, the insular type, one example of a disc type, and some versions of the spectacle type. Of course, there are many fragments that cannot be classified under any category due to their fragmentary condition. Let us now examine more closely, one by one, the most important of our finds. The largest among the Phrygian fibulae, nearly 10 cm long, has a pair of oblong rectangular beads, alternating with smaller disc-shaped at its edge. This type finds parallels at Olympia, Argos, Ephesus, and Rhodes, but none of them is identical with our example, as the rectangular beads of the Despotico type are oblong. This type of Phrygian fibula has a thick arch and ribbed beads on either side and on the top middle. Except for Mysia Minor and Gordion, it has also close parallels from many sites in the Peloponnese and the islands. More problematic is the next fibula. Its incisions are reminiscent of a Sardis fibula, but its angular shape parallels an Ephesus one. Unfortunately, no exact parallels could be found. The next one is another challenging fibula with a thin, almost semicircular bow decorated with more than 5 clusters of distant beads. It finds relatively close parallels to Gordion and Olympia. Nevertheless, the elongated bead in the middle is reminiscent of an astragalus. Could this imply that this is an imitation rather a Phrygian fibula? The answer is yes for the next one, which is for sure a Phrygian imitation, as implied by the bow shape. This finds parallels from Gordion and Ephesus, while it's rare on the Aegean islands. The next 3 fibulae are arch-shaped. Of interest is the third one. It has incised decoration on the bow and an incised X on its small catch plate. It finds a very close parallel to a fibula from the sanctuary of Athnaitonia at Philia, Thessaly. Now we will move on with the Attic Boeotia fibulae. This type is quite common in the mainland Greece, but it also can find parallels in the islands, for example Delos and Skyros. This is not the case with this fibula, pretty uncommon, to which we can find one not exact parallel from the sanctuary of Athnaitonia at Philia. The last fibula of this type preserves only its plate, on which we can discern 2 incised system of concentric circles. These circles were quite common on fibula plates, but not that common on fibula found on islands, with an exception from Aegina. We are now moving to the insular types. In this example, the bow has 5 globules and the middle one is elongated. The catch plate is small and triangular. Numerous examples of this type come from the Aegean, one of which from Paros. Our second example differs only slightly, as it has a bigger catch plate and it's generally a little bit bigger than the previous one. Although fragmentary, the following example is quite remarkable. The central globule is crowned, probably by a smaller one, and it's not true because it is broken, and its left is also decorated. It's really closely related with this parallel from Ephesus. The next fibula, with a plain plate and a large lentoid to circular bead, ornamented with globules on both sides, is mentioned to have one identical parallel coming from Kythnos, but unfortunately there is no photograph published yet. The next lentoid fibula is more common as it finds parallels from the islands, such as Crete and Rhodes. Disc-shaped fibulae are extremely rare during the archaic times in the Aegean. However, the one from the Spotiko finds a pretty good parallel in a fibula from Ialissos. On your screen you now see the largest of the Spotiko fibulae. It is a bronze spiral fibula of the spectacle type, formed by a single wire wound into 8 concentric spirals for each of the 2 large discs. Nearly every sanctuary site has such a spiral fibula, but usually not that big. More interesting is the smaller 8-shaped spectacle fibula, which is made of solid bronze. It has 2 discs inside with circular bosses, which are punched from the back. Of the same type, 5 more ivory spectacle fibulae were found. You can see 4 of them. These are much more common in the Aegean, and even though their metal counterparts are relatively rare, a big assemblage of both bronze and bone spectacle fibulae, pretty much similar to the Spotiko ones, was excavated on Kythnos. Last, there are 2 fragments of violin-shaped fibulae, an iron and a bronze one, which probably also originate from the spectacle fibula. The vast majority of the fibulae were found in the North Complex, the Temenos. A fragment of the fibula pin was discovered in the building Epsilon, dating from the mid-6th to the early 5th century BCE. 8 more were found in the area of building Delta. The pottery from these deposits spans from the geometric to the archaic periods. Unfortunately, most of the fibulae found there are in a fragmentary condition. The vast majority of them, 16, were found inside building Alpha, and in room Alpha N in particular, one of consisting the temple. They were positioned under the floor's paving slabs, which can be seen here, together with most of the sanctuary's votives. This assemblage dates back from the 7th to the 6th century BCE. Pottery is mostly Parian, but there are imports, including wares from Argos, Chios, Anatolia and Rhodes. As we have seen, the same is confirmed by the fibulae. Because of their find spot, we shall consider them as votives, possibly gifted to the gods together with the clothes that were used to fasten. Their treatment reveals as so. They were carefully placed under the temple's new floor after they had been displayed for a certain time in the sanctuary. Unfortunately, we cannot attribute them to male or female worshippers, neither can we tell whether they were consecrated to Apollo, Artemis, or some other deity, as they do not present any gender indications. With some greater probability, we can speculate that they were personal offerings of both artistic and sentimental value. They were both local products and imports from the Asia Minor, other islands, and mainland Greece. In general, they follow the depositional patterns of archaic Greek sanctuaries, according to which personal, valued objects were gifted as votives, regardless deity or area. Some of the data may change as the excavation is still ongoing. Since the study is also in progress, suggestions and comments are more than welcome. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Manolis, for your presentation. I don't know if you're live present here for the question after the session, but anyway, thanks a lot. Very interesting because, again, we have a very good stratigraphical context here, and this shows the wealth of the religious activity in the Cyclades and during the late geometric and early archaic period, and the kind of large stylistic bric-a-brac, I would say, which is illustrated with the fibula coming from various regions and various styles. So, without further delay, I may introduce shortly the next speaker, Angeliki Livieri, who has a PhD from the University of Vienna and is now a postdoctoral fellow in Munich, if I'm right. So please please go for your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, very well. Thanks.
Yeah, moment. Moment. Allora, I would like to thank the organizers, especially Professor Hercule Lafley, for the invitation to attend this conference. Here you can see the contents of my presentation. Let's start with a short introduction. Pincet buckles were used in ancient Greece for fastening and decorating hair clothes as part of diadems or chest jewelry. They accompanied the deceased as burial offerings or fixed her or his shroud, or they were gifts dedicated to the deities in temples, as both findings and the list of temple treasures inform us. Occasionally, in the classical period, were found more than 2 pieces in the same grave, 5 or 6, a common known from the geometric period. Pins were already known in 3rd millennium in the Aegean cultures. This is confirmed by thin pins of large quantities, usually of bone or bronze, occasionally of precious metal, which were found in the early Cycladic cemetery of Halandriani, in Syros, in Naxos, and other locations, and a few in the mainland. Some of these pins may have been used as dress fasteners because they were found to the shoulders of the deceased. Here 2 silver examples. All pins have affinities with Anatolia, Troy 2-5, Alaya Hutsuk, Tarsus, etc. The appearance of gold pins is rare, as a gold miniature jag in the Thyreatis treasure in Berlin that looks like a pinhead comparable with similar objects from Troy II. Another gold pinhead from Thyreatis has the form of an antelope's hand. It is comparable with similar pins from Sakar Basar, dated about 2900 BC. Nevertheless, the best-known collections of gold jewelry from the early Bronze Age come from the northeastern Aegean, especially from the site of Polyochni in Lemnos and from Troy, including also pins. These pieces are especially impressive for their more advanced techniques imported from Anatolia, which include filigree and granulation. We can see a hairpin from Polyochni with 2 beds from the Yellow period. From the Minoan culture are also preserved gold pins. They come from early Minoan tops at Moklos and Male. Their finial imitates flowers, daisies, saffron, etc. They were inserted into holes in the ends of diadems, fastening them to the hair, or used for fastening clothes. We can see 3 examples. The first 2 were found in the Moklos cemetery, shaped as an olive leaf or a daisy flower, dated in the Prepalacial period. The third comes from Malia in the form of a small flower, dated in the Paleopalacial period. The use of hairpins by the Minoans is also confirmed by depictions on wall paintings, as for instance the famous Blue Ladies from the Knossos Palace and the Wounded Girl from the Aditon in Akrotiri Thera. The first women are perhaps ladies of the court at the Cnossian Palace, richly dressed with elaborate coiffures and lavishly bejeweled on a blue background. It seems that in some points the elaborate pearl-net jewelry of their hair is fastened with pins. In the second example, a long pin with an iris or pomegranate flower is stuck behind her neck, and a myrtle or an olive branch is fastening over her forehead. The Mycenaeans adopted the pins use and the art of goldsmithing from the Minoans, and they passed them on to the next period. From the Mycenaean period, they preserved more pins of other materials, ivory, stone, faience, rock crystal, than gold ones. Occasionally, the pin hands of other materials were coated with a very thin sheet of gold leaves that has been lost or damaged. I selected 3 examples. A unique and very sophisticated motif appears in the gold terminal plaque of a silver pin from shaft grave 3 in Mycenae. The gold foil is cut and impacted. It depicts a standing woman with Minoan dress, perhaps a goddess, framed by papyrus lily floral motifs. After Spiridon Marinatos, this composition is a simple imitation of an Egyptian symbol that means numerous years of joyful life. In the Minoan religion, both the lily and papyrus were emblems of and sacred to the goddess. The second example shows a golden lily blossom from a vaulted tomb in Volos, Thessaly, that was a pin crown. Similar gold floral motifs found in Dimini of Thessaly. A pin heads of other materials, stone or a glass mass, covered with sheet gold, imitate floral motifs, e.g. poppy fruit, and crown bronze or silver pins, were found in the vaulted tomb of Vafio on the Peloponnese. I'll see the example. In the geometric period, Mycenaean decorative motifs and goldsmith's techniques survive. Examples decorating with Mycenaean motifs confirm the continuity in both jewelry and funeral customs. For instance, the 2 gold pins hands or necklaces parts, pendants, in the Goulandris Museum of Cycladic Art in Athens, which is said to come perhaps from Skyros, imported there from Thessaly. They consist of an elongated cylindrical bead framed by 2 pairs of spirals attached to the top and bottom. At the first piece, the stem is also preserved. Similar pieces with spiral motifs were found in various Greek locations, e.g. Lefkadi of Boia, Ideon Cave of Crete, etc., made of different materials that show the spread of fashion and the design's popularity. We can see examples from the National Archaeological Museum of Athens from the Mycenaean period, a gold necklace from Anavissos, bronze brooch from Macedonia, silver ring, and bracelet. The animal or bird-like hand type is rare as an example from the site Ekes at Knossos, dated around 800 BC, currently in Heraklio. It is a pin pair with a gold crown of a pelican standing on a disc. The pins are connected with a gold safety chain, while the needle is silver. These chains are usually visible from the 6th century onwards, e.g. the silver pin pair with opium poppy capsule-like head from Crete in Athens, ending in swan heads. This fashion's design continues in the Hellenistic period, as shows the gold chain with a pin crowning by a standing Aphrodite on a Corinthian capital from Syria in London. Archaic gold straight pins are preserved in a variety of finials motifs, from a simple unadorned spherical bead to an elaborate floral motif, e.g. a flower, a pomegranate, or a poppy fruit. They were very popular, even becoming parts of other jewelry, pendants, beads of necklace, or earrings. We can see a silver pin with a plain golden ball from East Greece in New York. Pomegranate-like crown are depicted in the votive pin from Ephesus in the British Museum, which was dedicated to Artemis of Ephesus. In this sanctuary, many and various pin types were found. Pins in pomegranate shape were also found in Perachora at Corinth. The pin from Delos, found near the Dionysos house, bears a poppy-like fruit decoration. It was made by a Cycladic jewelry workshop. Similar motif has a pendant or a vase-shaped bead from Argos in Athens. A very impressive and elaborate group of pins with a flower-like hand was found in different graves in the Synthos cemetery near Thessaloniki, dated in the 6th century BC. The first pair belongs to the earliest pieces. Both pins were found on the shoulder of a dead woman, which means that they used to fasten her garment. The needle and hand are made of gold. Each head pin consists of two spherical beads decorated with floral motifs in granulation technique, ending in a disc with a 17-leaf including a rosette and another conical smaller rosette. Similar decoration with small differences is visible in the next pins pair. Also found in Synthos cemetery, a grave 20, is a gold pin pair with silver needles with a flower-like motif on a disc hand. This flower form was very popular in Macedonian jewelry and was used in various variants in other pieces as well as in earrings which were found in other graves. They belong to the most expressive and sophisticated pieces. Similar needles rings form appears also in beads of necklaces, as for instance from Eretria in Berlin and in Athens, and in brooches, as we can see later. Another fibula type originated from the Mycenaean period and developed in the geometric and later periods is the bow-shaped. It appears in many variants, sizes, and materials. However, only a few are preserved in gold. The earliest bow forms are the violin or fine-shaped and the leaf-shaped. We can see one example of its design. The bow buckles are distinguished into two main types, the Attic Boeotian and the Macedonian. The first type was found in graves and in the great Panhellenic or local sanctuaries. It consists of a semicircular arch resting at one end on a square forged plate, decorated often on both sides with engraved representations such as a scorpion, a bird, a horse, a sheep, geometrical motifs. This brooch form was very popular, spread from Attica and Boeotia, Thessaly, and elsewhere. I selected two examples. The first is in Athens, found in Anabyssos, decorated with a scorpio-like motif. The second is in London, it comes perhaps from Athens, decorated in both plate surfaces with a horse and a sheep motif. The latter belongs to a rare Attic Boeotian type, from which are preserved more examples of bronze than of gold. They are very impressive and could be characterized as monumental. The Macedonian type has various forms. Here are some very elaborate pieces in different techniques decorated with various motifs. This variety is visible in terms of both beads and dense shape and decoration. Numerous gold bow brooches were found in different sites in Macedonia, North Greece, dated from the end of the 6th to the last quarter of the 4th century BC. For instance, in Synthos, Derveni, Enia, and elsewhere. It is interesting that occasionally 6 or 5 brooches were found in a single grave, as for instance in the grave Zeta from Derveni or in an unknown tomb near Thessaloniki. The earliest Macedonian bow type comes from grave 119 in Synthos, where 3 buckled silver pairs were found. Their bow is decorated with 5 rings or beads, consisting each of 6 plastic elements, similar to these of the 2 pins or diadems we have just seen. This type influenced the gold buckles production of the second half of the 4th century. In the second half of the 4th century, the bow beads evolved into hexagonal rings, for instance, examples from Derveni and Thessaloniki. The bow end's shape and decoration is developed similarly, as show some variants from Thessaloniki and Katerini. New iconographical motifs appear. E.g., the earlier snake hand is replaced with mythical animals, griffins, sphinxes, Pegasus, for instance, in our example B and C. The double small plate at the other end of the bow is decorated with a representation of a lion hide or a human head with a lion skin, Hercules, which was also a very popular motif decorating coins, vases, and other objects. E.g., a brooch from Thessaloniki in Berlin, our example D, that belongs to a group of 5 similar funerary offerings found in the same tomb, as also the so-called Ganymedes earrings. The type of buckles with 6 pointing rings was preserved until the 2nd century BC. We can observe a variety in the shape and decoration of the bow beads. In numerous depictions are also visible pins and brooches, as for instance in following vase paintings. A moment. In sculpture works, this type of jewelry was often added, made of other material, and usually it is lost. Nevertheless, there are numerous examples showing fibulae of the same material, as for instance the detail of a funerary stele from Dion, where the fibula is depicted of marble. Final remarks. From the Bronze Age onwards, fibulae, pins and brooches accompanied the deceased beyond as grave offerings. This jewelry was found usually in female tops. Nevertheless, they were used by both sexes and ages. We have seen gold pieces in a great variety of designs, decoration motifs and techniques, granulation, filigree, casting, etc. Traditional motifs and technique continue to be used, enriched with new ideas, following the time's trends and combining tradition and innovation harmoniously. Numerous pieces are very elaborate, masterpieces in miniature, showing the skills and passions of Greek goldsmiths. Local workshops developed in different regions in the mainland and in the islands. Gold jewelry demonstrates wealth and power of its owner, his social economical status and power, the trend for beautification and elegance of the dead. Additionally, they provide us with information about the burial customs of each period, e.g., observing the number of the fibulae found in the same tomb, their place in the deceased, on her shoulder, hair, around her, or fastening the shroud. Fibulae remained in use also after they were replaced by buttons, following the clothes, haircut, and jewelry fashion trends. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Levieri, for this wide-ranging overview of truly luxury items in gold, and especially in funerary context, of course, with this ostentatious custom, which is not everywhere at every time. So it's very interesting to see the pattern that comes from your paper. And I also noticed that there is some similarities with bronze fibula or pins or brooches,
Yes.
but most of the times they are much more elaborated, much more rich in their decoration. So that's very, very interesting. Thank you very much. So as we say, we keep the question for the end of the session, and we will now hear Dr. Emre Erdan from Adana Menderes University, who will present Phrygian fibulae in the West. So I'll let him share his screen.
Thank you, Dr. Merit. Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Ergun Laflı, Alev Çetingöz, Gülseren Kanşayn, and Hugo Toyen for the opportunity to participate in this important organization. Phrygian fibulae are not only a daily life material, but they are also essential in terms of some of the features they reflect. This type of fibulae is associated with prestige as a royal symbol and an indicator of wealth in the Phrygian capital and its immediate surroundings where it was first produced. Then turns into an identity object to distinguish the Phrygians from the others in the reliefs of the East. The Western examples examined in this study reflect entirely different purposes, functions, and meanings. The Phrygian fibulae, which reached the West at the end of the 8th century BC, must have started to be produced in centers here. Phrygian fibulae are identified as votives in temples or sanctuaries at almost all fine spots in Western Anatolia, the Aegean Islands, and Greece. There are, of course, exceptional cases. In some settlements of Western Anatolia, the Aegean Islands, Greece, and also Italy, these objects were presented as grave goods in necropolises. In 1983, Jenner evaluated Phrygian fibulae in 16 groups classified as A to S and mini variants, and Gordian's new chronological results show fibulae produced from the middle of the 9th century BC. Phrygian fibulae is also depicted in terracotta figurines in Greece, were used between 8th and 6th centuries BC in the West. On the other hand, we don't have detailed information about where the object reached first. Some scholars believe that the object reached the West as part of textiles. In the west of the kingdom, Phrygian fibulae are found in 22 cities in Greece, 20 in Aegean Islands, 17 in Western Anatolia, and 7 cities in Italy. To briefly mention the find centers, in Western Anatolia, Phrygian fibulae found in 17 centers, including Ephesus. The number of fibulae as votives in Western Anatolia, especially in Ephesus and Miletus, is remarkable, and most of the examples point to a local production. The situation is different in Northwest Anatolia. I will consider this matter later. In islands, Phrygian fibulae were found on 20 Aegean islands, including Rhodes and Crete. Those located in more than one settlement on some islands provide information about the Phrygian-Aegean connections and the local production potential. An interesting situation here is related to Southwest Anatolia. Unlike Rhodes and Northern Ionia, Phrygian fibulae looks not common here. On the other hand, the region's peoples use fibulae intensively. The so-called island types are prevalent in here. In this case, we can attribute the absence of Phrygian fibulae to the conservative attitude of the local people. The next region is Greece. Phrygian fibulae have been found in 22 cities in Greece so far. Although they are found in every region in ancient Greece, Phrygian fibulae are more common in Peloponnesus and primarily associated with temples or sanctuaries. Next, Italy. Phrygian fibulae were found just in 7 cities in Italy, and only one Phrygian fibula has been found in each here. Although it is not important in terms of quantity, the presence of Phrygian fibulae here has been associated with colonial movements in previous studies, and all of them are found in necropolises. When we evaluate the production centers, no fibula mounds were found in Gordion during the excavations carried out to date. On the other hand, Phrygian fibula mounds were found in Kamankalevik, Smyrna, Sardis, Miletus, and Elmalı excavations. In addition to these, misproduced Phrygian fibulae were found in Nif. These examples show that the fibula were produced in a wide area, especially in Western Anatolia during the Iron Age. Although Phrygian fibulae in Central Anatolia are reflected as an identity card together with the prestigious garments of the ruling class, it can be observed that this object has transformed in the Western world in terms of its user's gender, purpose, and meaning. As can be seen, the Phrygian fibulae, whether it's a sanctuary temple or grave find, are related to religion rather than households that reflect the traces of daily life. In previous work, it has been suggested that Phrygian fibulae's T-shaped catch plates were symbolic goddess idol reflections and were elected as portable cult objects. Phrygian fibulae also appear on extremely rare early electron coins. Most known from the catalogs of American Numismatic Society, the coins in question may have been produced around ancient Aeolis in Phocaea, Larissa, or Cumae. The connection between Phrygian fibulae and deities in the West is another issue. An object belonging to Phrygians who worshipped Matar, later associated with Cybele, is expected to be more related to Artemis in synchronization with Matar Cybele. Although this situation was observed in the sanctuaries or temples of Artemis, Phrygian fibulae mainly were found in temples associated with Athena. Phrygian fibulae are mostly associated with goddess cults, as seen in temples. After Athena, the cults with which Phrygian fibulae are most associated include Artemis, Hera, undefined female deities, Apollon, Aphea, Nymphs, Poseidon, Enodia, and Elatia. Not only the fibulae, but as reflected in many archaeological materials, Phrygian elements increased significantly in 7th century BC and later in Aeolis region in western Anatolia. Phrygian products, which increased significantly when they lost their political power, suggest that at least a group of expert craftsmen and qualified textile workshops may have transitioned to this region. Troy and its people, one of the most important cities of the northern Aeolis area, which is considered through us, are equated with Phrygians in many ancient texts and should be evaluated together with the population transformation process. When considering migration, the fine spots of Phrygian fibulae in the Northeast Aegean and its immediate surroundings are attractive. Around the 7th century BC, many Phrygian fibulae began to be found in tombs, particularly in Assos, Tundra, Antissa, Tenedos, and Samothrace. This situation is one of the most critical pieces of evidence supporting the idea of Phrygian communities immigrating to Western Anatolia when the relationship of fibulae with national identity is evaluated together. To sum up, Phrygian fibulae are among the most common fibulae of all groups. In Gordion and close surroundings, Phrygian fibula is an item related to the ruling class as a symbol of prestige. It is suggested that they may have been considered as a portable cult object. On the reliefs of Eastern societies, they are like an identity card. Fibulae were especially depicted to distinguish the Phrygians from other communities here. Phrygian fibulae were used in West with a cumulative increase from the 8th century BC until the 6th century BC. It is mainly related to women's use here, and it is understood they are considered as votive objects, especially offered to temples, secretariats of goddesses. While locally produced copies are common in the West, many imported fibulae also reflect direct links with the Phrygian kingdom. Especially in Northeast Aegean, Phrygian fibulae seem to be related identity again and are commonly found in tombs. This situation makes us think of the Phrygian migration to this region after the 7th century BC. They became a religious symbol related to goddesses in West and were probably depicted as symbols of city-state on coins. Northern Greek and Balkan fibulae, identified as Charnier fibae, are direct imitations of Phrygian fibulae. The production dates of this type of fibula, which bears one-to-one similarities with Phrygian fibulae except for the catch plate, coincide with around 7th century BC when the Phrygians lost their political power. As I mentioned before, the Balkanic origin of the Phrygians cannot be associated with any valid archaeological data except ancient texts. No material consulting the Phrygian culture was transported from the Balkans to Anatolia. However, much material was introduced and transported to the West by the Phrygians in the 8th century BC and beyond. This makes us think, of course, as a hypothesis, that the Phrygians migrated from Anatolia to Balkans, not from the Balkans to Anatolia, around the 7th century BC. In such a scenario, a logical explanation can be proposed for the Balkanic origin of the Phrygians in the narratives. According to this hypothesis, writers who first mentioned the Phrygians, whom they defined as Balkan origin in the 5th century BC, later introduced communities that had already reached the Balkans. Objects that reflect national identity in Iron Age, such as fibulae, should be used for such hypotheses, rather than pottery, which often misleads understanding of the origins of the societies. It can be thought that the Phrygian fibula find spots, whose number is expected to increase in the future, will enable us to make more concentrated comments on the subject. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Emre, for this very wide-ranging presentation. It embraced a lot of topics and a huge body of evidence of what we call Phrygian fibula. Of course, even this label of Phrygian fibula is questionable because since you show that there is some mold, I knew the one from Smyrna, I didn't know the one from Miletus. So it's very interesting. We shall exchange on that subject, but later. So thanks a lot. Just one remark on your map. Of course, there is a lack of Karya, and I think this is just because Karyan sites or Karyan collections have not yet been fully published or fully, but there surely be some. There surely be some. I think I saw some at the Bottom Museum, so they should be adding some dots on the map again. Thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks a lot. And now I should leave the speak to Petya Ilieva from the Bulgarian Academy of Science, who is specialized on Thrace and Northern Aegean, who shall present us the northern Phrygian type of fibulae from Aegean Thrace, and hopefully we will have a more closer look on a special place of Phrygian fibula, which have been evocated by Emre. So please.
I also would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to participate in this conference. My presentation will be rather brief, as it aims at attracting the attention to a still rather small group of safety pins from Aegean Thrace. Here you can see a slide with a map of the area, and I will not offer an in-depth analysis because the available data is still very limited. My presentation will focus on several fibulae which seem to form a local variation of the Phrygian type, with a most likely date within the 5th century BC. Only 5 examples are known up to date, according to my knowledge. All of these come from sites in that part of ancient Thrace, which is nowadays in modern North Greece. 2 examples which were discovered in the south necropolis of Samothrace, here is Samothrace, are published. 3 more remain unpublished. Of these, 1 comes from the necropolis of the ancient coastal site identified with streme of the ancient written sources. It is, it's located here. It is exhibited today in the Archaeological Museum of Komotini. There are 2 more fibulae, supposedly of the same type, which belong to the collection of the Ashmolean Museum at Oxford. These came from a location named Othman Evren in Western Thrace, according to the available information which accompanies them. Only 1 exemplar from the south necropolis of Samothrace, out of all the 5 examples, has ever been described and illustrated, and allows for a general description of that variant. The arc is semicircular and it has 6 smooth cylindrical knobs closely spaced on it. These leave the center unstressed, unlike the Phrygian type fibula with uneven number of moldings. The catch plate is horned, as you can see, but it lacks decorative rivets. In fact, the lower part of the catch plate, as well as the pin and most of the spring, are missing. The fibula was cast in 1 piece. The second exemplar from Samothrace is fragmentary and distorted, according to the excavator Elspeth Dusenbury, and it was not catalogued and illustrated in the publication. As already mentioned, another identical example is also a burial find and comes from the cemetery of the ancient site at Strime. Its shape, as well as the smooth cylindrical moldings, are identical with those of the Samothracian examples. The moldings, however, are 7 instead of the 6 on the fibula from Samothrace in the Ashmolean Museum. In her discussion of the Samothracian examples, Dusenbury refers to the 2 fibulae kept in the collection of the Ashmolean Museum as being of this precise form, she says. Oscar Moscarella provides a brief information on these two examples. These were found by Stanley Casson during his travels in Thrace. Duisenberry elaborated that the Oxford fibula came from a place called Othman Evren in western Thrace, which is how today Greek Thrace is often referred to. At the time of Casson's travels in northern Greece, it was still part of the Ottoman Empire, and logically he recorded the place names used at that time. I was not able to locate the finding place of these two fibulae or find out its modern name. I also discussed this with colleagues working in the Xanthi and Komoutini museums in northern Greece recently, just a few days ago, and they said they've tried, but they were never able to identify which is the modern equivalent of the Ottoman Evren. During a research stay at the University of Oxford, I did ask for permission to see the two fibulae, but despite the given promise, I was not actually given access to these fibulae, so I haven't seen them. So far, for the moment, we're left with the combined information provided by Moscarella and Elspeth Duisenberry. The description which Moscarella provides suggests that these must be nearly the same as the Samothrasian ones. He says each fibula has a horn, catch, and an arc, which is divided into 6 oblong sections, the pinnulas cast with the arc. 3 out of the 5 examples reported at present come from cemeteries, and I will not be surprised if the Oxford fibula were also burial equipment or gifts. The exemplar from the site identified as ancient streamer is the only one which came from a closed context, thus providing a secure dating in the 5th century, but no more than that. No more precise dating. Because the final publication of the excavated graves from the necropolis of Strima is still pending, there is no available information about the rest of the burial equipment which accompanied the safety pin in question. Therefore, a more precise dating within the 5th century is not possible at present. Furthermore, both examples from the south necropolis of Samothrace were not found in a grave or a grave group, thus the suggested dating in the 5th century is only tentative. The problem with assigning objects to a particular burial in the south necropolis of Samothrace stems from the fact that cremation was the dominant burial rite in the 6th and 5th centuries BC. The burials and funeral pyres were confined to a roughly rectangular area less than 300 square meters. You can see a plan of the cemetery here. Despite its restricted size, this cemetery was in use for centuries between the middle of the 6th century to the 2nd BC to the 2nd century AD. The funeral pyres were placed in the central part of the burial ground, as evidenced by thick layers of soot and ashes accumulated in some places to a depth of almost 2 meters. The burning of the body and the performance of accompanying rites were restricted to this core area, followed by collecting and placing the ashes in a ceramic vessel, which was then buried in virgin ground outside of the pyre zone. The excavator reports that quantities of debris vessels were found mingled with soot of the pyres, obviously left there after the vases were used and broken, purposely or unintentionally, during the burial rites. A significant number of fibulae found in the pyre area is taken, various types of fibulae, is taken by Duisenberry as an indication that the bodies were dressed and not shrouded for the funerary ceremony. Pieces of jewelry must have complemented the burial garments, judging by the earrings, finger rings, fragments of necklaces and pins discovered mixed with the soot of the pyres. Considering this feature of the burial rites conducted in the South Necropolis, and the fact that one of the discussed fibulae was found fragmentary and distorted, perhaps from being in the fire of the cremation, it is clear that assigning these two pieces to a particular burial becomes speculative. In addition, this burial rite was replaced by inhumation in the 4th century BC, when the whole core area of the South Necropolis was leveled with clean earth used to cover the deep soot of the pyre places. Although most of the inhumation burials were placed in new ground outside of the pyre area, many were still dug into it, often through the new clean soil, into the older soot layer left from the cremation rituals. As a consequence, the debris of the archaic and classical cremations was frequently disturbed by the inhumation burials. The ash containers of the earlier burials appear to have been removed from their original position and placed in groups in little compartments or straight into a hole by the diggers of the inhumation graves. 9 such groups of urns of variable dates were discovered during the archaeological campaigns in the cemetery and called by Dusenberry accumulations. While the respect paid to the earlier remains is remarkable, the actual attempt for rescuing and preserving them was often careless. Handles and feet of vases obviously fell off during the transfer and were discovered in the field of the cemetery, suggesting that some of the cremation graves may not have survived during the reorganization of the burial ground. These circumstances make it impossible to estimate what percentage of older archaic and classical graves has survived and was registered during the excavation of the cemetery. It would be a conjectural tool to associate all the materials from the necropolis with specific graves, thus depriving many of the finds from their original context. Consequently, the Samothracian examples cannot provide a more precise dating of that type of fibula, which I'm discussing. Thus, we are left with the general dating of the type in the 5th century BC. It appears that only the stream example may offer a narrower dating for the manufacture and use of that variation of Phrygian fibula when the full information regarding its context is available. Following Oscar Moscarella, Elsbeth Dusenberry assigns this type of fibula to group 12, subgroup 15 of Blinkenberg's classification. These seem to be, they describe them as Northern Greek variation, which derived from group 12 Phrygian prototypes. As Moscarella indicated, none of the examples of group 12-15 came from Anatolia, and none are earlier than the 6th century BC. These were all found in Greece or Macedonia. In fact, group 12-15 itself is very heterogeneous, as it includes different varieties of fibulae. One variety encompasses examples from Fere, Dodona, and Olynthus. These all have a semicircular arc with 4 moldings and no spring. Instead, the pin turns on a pivot. The chronology of the Olynthus example is determined by the destruction of the site in the mid-4th century BC. On the other side, the fibulae from the Argive Hereum have an arc flattened at the top and parallel to the pin, but again with 4 moldings. One example has a pivot, the other springs. More examples come from Perachora and Prosimna. All these fibulae belong to the 8th and 7th centuries BC contexts. It is clear, therefore, that while the 5 fibulae from Aegean Thrace belong generally to the category of Greek fibulae which derived from Phrygian prototypes, it includes a broad range of varieties. Thus, the examples from Thrace, for me at least, form a separate variety with a still not identified center of manufacture. Interestingly, the South Necropolis of Samothrace is the source of a significant amount of Phrygian fibulae. I counted in the publication 35 in total. These were assigned to Blinkenberg's group 12-14 with a suggested date in the late or end of 6th century BC. Although these fibulae were made in 2-part mold, all of these, their moldings were fully detailed only on one side. Either this may suggest a quick manufacture aiming at quantity rather than quality, or the product of the product, or a purposeful production designed specifically to cover the needs of the burial rites. In addition, it may indicate the work of a not very skillful artisan working locally. It is also important to stress that, by contrast to Samothrace, other early Iron Age and archaic cemeteries in Aegean Thrace have not provided even a single Phrygian fibula, according to my knowledge. And here you can see various examples of fibulae from early Iron Age and archaic cemeteries, all sorts of fibula types, but not Phrygian. Now, whether the manufacture of the 5th century BC Northern Aegean derivation of the Phrygian fibula should be linked to the significant presence of the late 6th century, likely locally made Phrygian fibula on Samothrace, is hard to tell at present. The currently attested concentration, but these 5 fibulae, their group in Aegean Thrace, however, may point at their local origins somewhere in the area or a traveling craftsman. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, dear colleague, for this very interesting presentation, which brings us first to another place, Northern Aegean, and then also to another time period, since we go down to the classical period and see the link with the earlier period. This is very interesting because you raised the question of the place of manufacture, which was also shortly evocated before, and you point that we should not rely too much on the identity or ethnicity of the fibula, and it seems that this material class, at least part of them, transcend ethnic identity and be a kind of class of material that can be widespread when it is transcend, like the Corinthian Aribaloi, for example, of course. So I think we quite perfectly stick to the schedule, and I can now ask all the participants to this morning session to reconnect their camera and microphone if they wish, and we can pass to the question. Of course, I have many questions to of almost all of the speakers to this morning. But I shall leave the first question to anyone in the audience who wish to speak. Is there anyone? You can raise your hand in the reaction or the small small item in the Zoom bar. Is there anyone who make the leap of faith to go to the first question? So maybe, well, of course, I won't monopolize the discussion, but I have first I would have a first question to Marisa. Just small question about the three period you showed, 3A, 3B, 3C, and the great presence of Megiddo during the 3C period. Is it just a question of the state of the art, the state of the excavation? Because of course Megiddo is a great site and very well excavated for a long time. So do you think that this dominance of Megiddo in the map is reflecting a reality, or is just a question of finding and the quality of finding?
It's a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
The Megiddo expedition, as you say, has been going on for so long that the very early excavations were not very well recorded. So some of the very old reports from 1937 have, 20 fibulae, but that's information. So no context, no typology, no material, none of this.
No sketch plan, nothing. Okay.
Nothing. So it's kind of a mess. But the other thing is that I think it also has to do with the nature of Megiddo itself, serving as the gateway between the northern Levant and the southern Levant, and as the gateway from the coastal plain to the inner Shephelah, the highlands of the Levant. So it serves as this kind of crossroad throughout all of the Iron II, but especially in the Iron II-C, because the Assyrians used it. They took advantage of this very central location. So I think it's a bit of both, I think.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Any more questions to Marisa Paper? Okay, Maya Vasileva, please.
Yes. Yes, I would like to ask Marisa, the only fibula she showed, the catch plate was formed like a horned claws of a predatory bird, which is very typical for the Phrygian fibulae and not very typical for the Near Eastern ones. So I'm curious whether do you see any connections with the Phrygian types of fibulae?
I do, and this particular fibula is complicated.
Yeah.
And a couple colleagues and I are writing a paper just on this one object because there's so much about it that's very interesting. I think it's certainly possible. The stamp seal on the bottom is Northern Levantine in form and imagery. So I think it's definitely possible that the catch plate originated even further north than the Southern Levant. Not really sure why, but that's what we want to explore in this paper.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for this question. I shall now go to Kerstin Bauer paper. And is there any question to Kerstin paper? I have one, but if there is anyone in the audience now. Okay, so is Kerstin still here? I don't know. Yes, she's here. Yeah. Thanks to the stratigraphy, you have been able to show that the use of this spectacle bone fibula goes from the 8th to the 6th century. And for me, in my ideas, it was really more 8th and 7th century than 6th. So are you sure that the 6th century stratigraphy is a stratigraphy of using of this fibula, or is it just the hazard of the the stratigraphy of the place?
Well, the fibula came from the Botros, so a collection of jewelry and votive gifts. And this Botros can be dated with all its contents to the 6th century, but we can exclude that the material was there before. Yeah,
okay. Thanks a lot. So yes, of course, a Botros is is a Botros, so we cannot speculate that it was still in use in the 6th century, even if it comes from this kind of context. Thanks a lot. Anyone else from this question of Arcadia fibula? And it's strange because it's a very inland site. It's not on the coast, so it's really rich deep inland, and it's very interesting for the coast-interland relation in inner Arcadia. But it's a question a little bit more far from our conference topic here, so I will not pursue. Thanks a lot. Manolis Petrakis on Despotico is not here, so here.
I managed to come.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm very sorry for that.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And we hear perfectly your video. So you're right in time for the potential question around your paper. Anyone who might wants to ask something to Manolis?
I can't start my video for some reason.
No, it was all right for us. We got you perfectly. Don't worry. So may I shall ask just one, if I may, is the question of you raised the question at the end of your paper that we cannot say really if it was female or male dedicant. Of course, this is a question everybody wants to ask, but do you know if there is any way to answer this? I mean, it's good to raise the question, but for example, for Athens, we know that in some specific context of specific cult, it is only female participants. and some others, it might be only male, but usually in Greek practices, there is no such distinction, and anyone can go to a shrine or a temple and make the same dedication. And I'm not sure if the gender issue can be answerable. So it's more a remark than a question. But if you want to spot on, you can if you have insight or ideas on the subject, please.
Yes, so thanks so much for the question and the remark. I think it could be a way, but we needed more material and more data. For example, I think that we always need an inscription in order to be sure to verify what's happening. The fibula, among other, with the earrings and some other metal objects which have been found, other had been considered as an indication that it was a cult of Artemis and not that of Apollo, because she's his sister, and it's a usual phenomenon in the Greek sanctuaries. And the other evidence were some women statue bases and the shape of the sanctuary, that there were at least two complexes. But again, I think that we need more evidence, and in order to try to decode the fibulae in order to answer this question, I think that only if we got to have enough comparanda from graves with osteological analysis and particular fibulae types from female or male or children graves, we could at some point give an answer for that. I think something, a study like that there is for Italia, but I do not know for something like that in Greek sanctuary, Greek culture for sure.
And that's a good place here to ask the question to the community if they have some clues about this.
I think it is the best, yes.
Yeah, because I don't. Okay. Anyone who wants to pursue the topic? Okay, we may come back to this later. Anyone? So we pass now to the Miss Angeliki Livieri presentation on gold fibula. If anyone in the audience wants to raise a point or ask a question. Yes, Professor Twinkle, yes. I might read the question if you want. Concerning the pins which are combined by chain, is there a specific tradition for this decoration?
As I said, the pins with chain appear on the 6th century and continue till to the Hellenistic time. And there are a few types of chains, a few very, very beautiful examples. And I think that these pins were used also as chest jewelry, not only on the shoulder, also as chest jewelry.
Thank you very much for that. Maybe we can exchange emails and go in the further discussion, Angeliki. It would be a pleasure for me. Thank you.
With pleasure.
Good idea. Good idea. So we have maybe Professor Lafleur, if we have just a few minutes for the last two papers for one or two questions to each paper.
Yes, of course we do. Of course.
Okay, great. Just to finish on Ms. Livieri paper, it's strange that of course, gold is a precious metal, but is there also some other precious metal used, like the mix of
silver, of course.
Yes, silver and the mix of
Yes.
electrum. Is there some in electrum?
Electron? No, I have not found an example of electron. No.
Because of course this electrum is used is very, very important too. So thank you, thank you. This is an information. The absence of information is an information also. So let's go now to Professor Dr. Emre Erdoğan of paper on frigid fibula. I've already made some remark. Is there any question? Maybe. Maya, yes.
Emre, congratulations. This was very informative and stimulating talk. My skepticism is about labeling the fibulae as an ethnic marker. As we know from the very good study on bronzes from Ephesus, they were largely widely imitated. So these were more like prestige objects or related to the cult. But ethnicity, I highly doubted that this is, and as you show, they are distributed in all over Greece and northern Aegean and so on, but they were imitated and started another types, as we saw from the northern Aegean. So that's my only remark, that ethnicity can hardly be seen in the fibulae.
Yeah. Thank you, Maya. Look, it's right. It's okay. Yeah, I understand. It's a very complicated issue. But my family is from Crete, and they came to Marmaris, southwestern Anatolia, in the beginning of 19th. And when I asked my grandmother, did you change your clothes? Did you change your dress when you came to Turkey, migrate to Turkey? She told me, no, next generation changed. Fibula is related with dress, garments, and clothes. Yeah. And Phrygian people, you are right. In Ephesus, over 140 examples of Phrygian fibulae found in here, but half of them is imported. And we should remember that the most crowded slave population in Athens in 5th century BC are Phrygians. According to ancient texts, Phrygians migrated, I think, not just to northwest Anatolia, not just northeast Anatolia. At 7th century BC, maybe following the Demodike, the queen of the Phrygian princes, serious population of people, I think, migrated to Aegean and beyond. And the fibulae we found at that time is so related with ethnicity, I think. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
Of course, this is a very wide range issue, and I think the only way to answer this is context. I mean, if we contextualize, sometimes it can be a powerful identity card, as it has been said, but sometimes not. We won't call a site a Corinthian because it has hundreds and hundreds of Corinthian ariballoi. So, and this is just a start to begin with. There is Petya Ilieva, who has also a question for Emre, I think.
Well, it's not actually a question, just a brief remark, if I may, if we have a few minutes. I liked very much his discussion on the distribution of fibula and his ideas of people moving. I know that it's very hard to support this archaeologically. Just wanted to let him and all the colleagues know that my studies of a pottery, because I'm very much a pottery person, late 8th and early 7th century BC pottery group which developed in the northeastern Aegean, there are some elements which show a very clear, very good link with Phrygian pottery. So it's still, I've tried to support my observation with additional archaeological information about the links of, between Phrygia and northwestern Anatolia and the northeastern Aegean. I didn't find a lot in bibliography. It's hard to prove it, but I can clearly see it in pottery.
Yeah, my PhD thesis was about Phrygian cultural impacts on Western Anatolia and beyond. And you are right, there is a common Phrygian pottery traditions in Western Anatolia and beyond at the 8th century BC and 7th century BC, especially in Aeolis, Troas, and beyond.
Yeah, I do agree. I've tried to find your PhD.
Not just the fibulae.
Yeah.
There almost all objects of Phrygians are reached to the west at the end of the 8th century BC.
Very early.
We should explain this. We should make a logical explanation for this.
Yeah, I do agree.
Marisa has a question also.
Yeah, I have a question about the fibulae molds, because in all of the productions in Assyria and in the Southern Levant, we have found none.
Yeah.
None. And this amazes me because there have been so many fibulae. And so I'm wondering about where the context of these molds are. Are they in metalworking shops or more jewelry and luxury goods? Where in a site would these be found? Maybe that will give us a good place to start looking.
Yeah, in Miletus and Sardis and Nif examples are from metal production centers. Also, the Smyrna example, I think it's it was found on the sanctuary of Athena, the mold in Smyrna. But the other ones are from the metalworking centers.
Interesting. I wonder if we've overlooked them, or I don't know, maybe they were destroyed or something. I find it very odd that we haven't found any.
But what is funny, there's no any. There are not any molds from Gordion yet.
Right.
We didn't find it in here.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and we should be back on this question of more. So we finished with Petya Ilieva paper and question about her presentation on Northern Aegean. Anyone who wants to? Of course, it has been already a little bit discussed with Petya question just before, and I agree that the fibula should not be seen in isolation with other part of material culture also, and the link with Eastern Aegean or Western Anatolia, whatever, from very early period, 8th century, maybe before also. And it continues after, because in the 6th and early classical period, there is strong link too, before Athens comes and erase everything. But Northern Aegean, I mean, this is a road for the boat. So, of course, the contacts here, they follow the boat. And this is very interesting for me to hear that on the bronze artifact point of view, not only on pottery, because usually it's only on pottery, and there is other class of material that can be used for this. Maybe I have, if there is no question, Marisa, you still want to ask a question, or is this just still raised? Okay. In Samothrace, there is no earlier grave than 6th century in the
No.
necropolis you showed?
No, there are
Okay.
no, and even the earliest are mid-6th century.
Yeah.
And these earliest mid-6th century graves, the dating is actually not that secure. We're not sure
Okay.
whether it's mid-6th or soon after the mid-6th, in the second half of the 6th. But
Yeah.
no graves before. There are early Iron Age dolmen type graves, but they're completely different at another part of the island. They're not related to the.
We have a gap.
More or less.
A big gap.
No,
Okay.
well, yeah, my personal opinion is regarding the colonization of Samothrace is that the cemeteries, as well as the sanctuary, does not give us a date before century, let's say mid-6th century. Or
Okay.
very, very, if we want to push it to the early 6th, but not before that.
Yeah. Or it remains to be found. Hopefully. No, you don't think?
There is earlier material. I don't think it's related to the Greek arrival on the island. It's pre-colonial.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
So, I think I don't see any more questions on the line. And if it's okay with everybody, we will close this morning session now with the approval of Professor Lafleur, and with just a short overschedule of 14 minutes is quite good. I think it's time for lunch break, and I guess everybody will be back at 12:30 Izmir time. Is it all right for you?